Taris was an urban planet in the fifth orbit of its star, located in the Taris system, within the Ojosta sector of the Outer Rim territories. Taris was orbited by 4 moons, including an anomalous moon nicknamed Rogue Moon. The term Tarisian was used to describe people and products from the planet, which took over a millennium to build, after being settled by human colonists from unknown origins. Eventually, alien species settled or visited the city, and before long, the Republic took notice of the world. The planet's ecumenopolis quickly developed over a century of prosperity, and as a result, the planet suffered from massive overpopulation. Once a galactic nexus that earned great wealth from its strategic position on hyperspace routes, Taris's importance declined with the discovery of improved trade routes, and the planet rapidly fell into decay, with a slow mass migration of its residents across the galaxy. The remainder of the planet's history was wrought with civil disorder and social unrest, as it turned to industry as a means of compensation for its economic troubles. Its oceans became polluted, eliminating the planet's main food source. After a century of the planet's ecosystem dying off, famine spread among the lower classes, while the rich hoarded what few supplies remained. The resulting strife led to the Tarisian Civil War, the start of lasting prejudices between the humanocentric Tarisian nobles and the largely alien underclass. The city became segmented. The lower classes were banned from living in the upper levels of Taris, and the planet became the poster child of an economically dying world. During the Mandalorian Wars, Taris served as a crucial rallying point for dissident Jedi, who had decided to fight against the invading Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. As the lower classes were crushed beneath the rich, crime became rampant, and the Tarisian government did little in response. This caused Losan Industries, a mining company which employed half of the planet's lower class in its operation, to leave Taris. The millions left unemployed rioted against the government, even spreading up to the middle levels, and kidnapping the planet's senator in the Galactic Senate, as well as the local constable. This caused the local Jedi to leave Taris as well, leaving the planet in a state of chaos, as the war raged on around it. By the time of the Jedi Civil War, order had been restored, but swoop gangs and crime still held sway over the lower city. During the war, Taris was conquered by Darth Revan's Sith Empire, which quarantined the planet in an attempt to capture Jedi Bastila Shan. As the search continued fruitlessly, the Sith leader Darth Malak ordered the bombardment of Taris, killing countless civilians. This act had huge political repercussions for the Sith, and changed the tone of the rest of the war, showing Malak and the Sith's true colors, the desire to achieve victory at any cost. This was despite the planet's horrific reputation of crime and segregation, and karma of many of its corrupt inhabitants. Over the next few millennia, the planet rebuilt and recovered from its devastation, though never reaching its former glory. Similar to other ecumenopolis like Coruscant and Nar Shaddaa, the upper levels were safe and secure, inhabited by the wealthy, while the lower levels were frequently plagued by gang warfare and inhabited by thugs and the poor. During the Great Galactic War, Taris had become the subject of both Jedi and Sith plans, while the Jedi wanted to rebuild the planet to prove to the people of the Republic that they were strong enough to recover from such a disaster, and with it raise morale. The Sith sought to foil their plans, to prove that the Republic couldn't recover from such a thing. Ultimately, the Sith were victorious, despite the Republic and Jedi's best efforts to defend the world. By the time of the Galactic Civil War, much of the city had been rebuilt, but never to the extent of it prior to the Jedi Civil War. However, by that time, many of the planet's problems that had plagued the city prior to the bombardment, including the species and class oppression, had disappeared with Taris's destruction millennia prior. This was a bittersweet resolution for the planet that once rivaled Coruscant. Taris was an ecumenopolis, at least in that all its land masses were covered in a large city. However, unlike other ecumenopoles, Taris had an ocean that covered a large part of the planet's surface, The ocean once possessed massive kelp farms that were used to sustain the planet's immense population. However, these farms were poisoned by pollution, leading to food shortages in the city. The city was formed over a century of prosperity. 8. A remarkable feat considering other ecumenopolies such as Nar Shaddaa took many centuries, even millennia to form. The towers of the city were tall and gleaming, possessing a unique, universally rounded appearance not found on other ecumenopolies. However, beneath the planet's initial pristine exterior lay the result of many years of lawlessness and oppression. In the lower city of Taris, the largely non-human population lived in total poverty and desperation, prevented from entering the safer upper city, which was almost exclusively inhabited by rich humans. Following the bombardment of Taris at the hands of Darth Revan's Sith Empire, the city was left in ruins. Although much of the city would be rebuilt in the following centuries, many ruins remained. Being an ecumenopolis, Taris had relatively little animal or plant life. There were, however, several important species. In the upper levels of Taris, there were feathered dogs used almost exclusively as pets. These unique creatures could be seen on leashes as their owners took them out on walks through the promenades of Taris. There were also large lizards that were domesticated and used to pull refuse through the lower city. One of the only species of wild animals on Taris was the simian tack. The tack possessed a unique gland in their heads that, when powdered, could be used to make Tarisian ale, a major export of Taris. As they were actually native to Kashyyyk, the presence of tacks on Taris may have been due to importation. The rat ghoul, the fiercest and most terrifying species on Taris, inhabited the Undercity. They were mutated humans that ruthlessly attacked anything outside of the protective gates of the Undercity. Contact with the rat ghouls caused a sentient to contract the rat ghoul plague, a terrible affliction that would cause the victim to turn into a rat ghoul. The oceans of Taris once hosted a variety of kelp and marine life that were harvested as food for the Tarisians. Most of these were later destroyed by pollution from Taris's many industries, and what was left of them was later consumed to extinction by the Tarisian nobles. Coin crabs were a species of small crustaceans native to the Tarisian coastlines. Renowned for their delicious taste, the people of Taris would sometimes deep fry and serve coin crabs at establishments such as the Horizon Hotel. During the Mandaron period, a fleet of human ships from unknown origins colonized the planet and built a city underground, which was completed by 5300 BBY, and according to Rukul, would become the site of the Promised Land. They were governed by the Taris Civil Authority. In 5100 BBY, the whole surface of the landmass was covered in a giant city, which would become the Undercity, which housed the sewers, which existed between the Promised Land and the Undercity, and was built sometime after. In 4600 BBY, as the population spread, another city was built on top of it, which would become the lower city, and then another in 4400 BBY, the middle city above that, and finally in 4300 BBY, the upper city was constructed, and the Promised Land was abandoned, and was eventually lost and forgotten. The kelp harvest and the oceanic fauna became the planet's only food source, since there was nowhere to grow crops or herd livestock on land. Eventually, different alien species settled or visited Taris. The Republic took notice of the world, and before long it prospered. Taris was situated on a major hyperspace transport hub, and owing to its wealth and population, became known as the Coruscant of the Outer Rim. Due to Taris being an ecumenopolis, with all land masses eclipsed with a world-spanning city, the city's grandeur was once said to rival the galactic capital, Coruscant, for 144 years. However, the planet wasn't truly a planet-wide city, as unlike other city planets such as Coruscant and Nar Shaddaa, it contained an ocean. With this title, the planet suffered from overpopulation, and only the Republic kept it from falling into disrepair. In 4156 BBY, Taris underwent a precipitous decline as the hyperspace lanes that were key to its prosperity shifted when newer, shorter routes were discovered and the planet underwent decades upon decades of urban decay. Without the Republic, its business died out, so its population shrank with the Tarisians' diaspora across the galaxy. By this point, the Promised Land had been rediscovered. To maintain the planet's economy, Taris turned to industry, the Tarisian industrialists switching to a new, cheaper power source. It produced toxic waste as a byproduct, which slowly polluted the once pristine ocean, in a century destroying the kelp farms and most of the marine life. While the issue of its overpopulation had been lifted, the city was slowly dying, which was an economical urban decay that would last for 200 years. When the Republic had abandoned the planet in 4156 BBY, Taris's population had likely numbered in the tens of billions. But by the time of the Sith occupation in 3956 BBY, the city's inhabitants had dwindled to 6 billion. In 4086 BBY, Taris received an extremely harsh review in Trampetter's Star Guide, where it was given the lowest possible recommendation. According to the author, T3 droids working in one of Taris's starports stole his baggage. While probably not having any influence on the development of the planet, it was nonetheless a reflection of the decay that Taris was undergoing. Eventually, the Rakghoul disease ended up in the Tarisian Undercity by unknown means. This caused the city to be abandoned. The sewer system was left to disrepair, and was eventually overrun by Rakghouls and Gamorrean slavers, but it still served as the planet's infrastructure. The Rakghouls often used the turbolifts from the sewers to ascend to the lower city and attack its residents. But the locals always won the fights of the disease. After several decades of Taris's ecosystem dying off from pollution, famine swept the planet. Panicking, the greedy Tarisian nobles hoarded the remaining kelp and marine life for themselves. Around 4056 BBY, a century before the Jedi Civil War, the starving lower class engaged the nobles in a massive civil war, where millions of innocents died, and large sections of Taris were destroyed or abandoned. The Promised Land was lost once more, and became a legend amongst the lower class. Ultimately, the nobles prevailed. The Tarisian prisons couldn't hold all the rebels, so the nobles began the tradition of banishing criminals and their descendants to the Undercity, unable to return to the surface under pain of death. These people became the outcasts. They built a village, but suffered from starvation, Rakghoul attacks and Rakghoul infections. All hope for them was lost, save for the legendary Promised Land. The remaining kelp, along with the remaining oceanic fauna, was consumed to extinction by the Tarisian nobles, after which they were forced to rely on imported food. Also, because many of the rebels were aliens, the human nobles became prejudiced against non-humans, and banished them from the upper city to the lower city, punishing any that dared to enter the upper levels without a permit. Thus began the long oppression by the humanocentric Tarisian nobility of the non-human lower class. The lower city's conflicts with the Rakghouls continued, but the locals continued to emerge victorious. Their hope for improving their lives was to save up until they could leave the world. Naturally, this gave the planet a very bad reputation to off-worlders, both human and alien. The middle city, however, was more tolerant of aliens and poor humans. The gangs in the lower city got worse as they fought each other more, and their main vehicle was the swoop bike, where they competed in the Tarisian season opener. Thus the term swoop gang was coined. Many gangs oppressed the common lower city citizens. It was here that swoop racing captured the imagination of the galaxy, around 4000 BBY. Using an intricate system of hyperspace beacons, Tarisian race organizers broadcast the results of their swoop races throughout the galaxy, which eventually gave rise to a huge and profitable gambling operation, and was funded by Sherka Corporation. The planet also began to export Tarisian ale that was made from a gland from a tack. Taris remained a hub for swoop racing for decades, becoming the center of the galactic swoop racing circuit. At this time, the exchange based itself on Taris, and the Taris civil authority only accepted bribes to keep quiet or collaborate in their operations. The hidden Beks were the main authority of the lower levels, and policed various other gangs, most notably the Black Volkers, with whom a swoop gang war had begun in 3076 BBY. In 3076 BBY, the Jedi Tower was constructed in the Upper City shortly after the outbreak of the Mandalorian Wars and the local swoop gang war. In a 3966 BBY secret backroom deal, Hadal Garavis helped install Losan Industries on Taris, and in exchange, Yervo Thalion bribed Taris into the Republic and installed Garavis as its senator. Losan Industries replaced Shirka Corporation in funding the swoop races. Around the year 3964 BBY, Captain Saul Karath commanded the Republic fleet that protected Taris during the Mandalorian Wars, during which they built themselves a base in the Upper City. Due to Taris' proximity to the Mandalorian war front, it had been granted Republic membership in 3966 BBY, and it became the heart of the Republic's defense for the region. The planet served as a staging point for dissident Jedi, who were led by Revan and his apprentice Malak, and their allies for campaigns against the Mandalorians, who based themselves in the Jedi Academy. Many exchange members sold their slaves to the Mandalorian Mir Crusaders. Among them was the slave Azor and the slave Juhani in the lower city. They dissolved the Taris civil authority and drove the exchange off the planet. The Jedi Order freed the slaves, but the Mandalorian presence did not lift. Meanwhile, Taris had compensated for its decaying importance to trade routes by negotiating with Losan Industries, which employed over half of the lower city residents in its mining activities. However, due to increasing swoop gang activity, Losan was considering pulling out and moving its operations to a world with less crime. The local authorities assured Losan Industries that they had the swoop gangs fully under control and would take care of them with the assistance from the local Jedi. However, after a fugitive Jedi Padawan named Zane Carrick was accused of murdering the entire graduating class of new Jedi Knights and escaped twice from Jedi custody in the Jedi Tower, Losan made its decision and abandoned Taris. This left many Tarisians unemployed, and angry citizens rioted all over Taris, setting entire sections of skyline on fire. The riots soon spilled up into the middle city. Crime enveloped Taris. The Chancellor of the Republic became suspicious of Taris's quick entry into the Republic and sent Jedi Master Rana Tay to retrieve Garavis. Yervo Thalion, head of Losan, became frantic since it was Garavis who had installed Losan on the planet, and Yervo had arranged a Senate seat in the Grand Convocation Chamber of the Senate building on Coruscant for him in return. He hired Marn Hieroglyph and the Mumo brothers to retrieve the senator. He promised Hieroglyph a reprieve of the massacre charges, and most of the bounties on him lifted, but also secretly ordered the Mumo brothers to kill Garavis, as he had become a liability. Hadal Garavis, the senator who represented the planet in the Galactic Senate, disappeared, and the constable's family was kidnapped. Due to the political anarchy, the Jedi based on Taris were recalled to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, abandoning the Tarisians to their fates. Taris was also largely abandoned by the Republic military. It maintained only a small military base on the planet's surface. Without the protection of the Jedi and the Republic military, Taris was left open to a Mandalorian invasion. The Mandalorians, led by Cassius Fett, used Taris to make their first direct strike at the Republic, and captured the Jedi Tower, and to a lesser extent, the military base, which was used as the Mandalorian base. The Tarisians formed a small resistance movement, led by the swoop gangs, such as the Hidden Beks, which employed guerrilla tactics to assist them. Hieroglyph met up with the Beks, and was soon reunited with Zane Carrick. The Beks wished to join with the resistance, but had nothing of value to offer them. However, Carrick found the constable's children, who were being held hostage by Brayik and Griff Vow. The Beks then took the children to the resistance, where they were reunited with their mother. Together, they sought to take out the Mandalorian commander, Cassius Fett. Cassius was defeating the resistance, driving them into the Undercity, and eventually they left the planet aboard the Last Resort, their ship that was based in the Undercity. The Mandalorians then used Taris as a stronghold in their conquest of the galaxy. For this, Cassius became the most wanted person in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the Battle of Malachor V, the Mandalorians presumably abandoned the planet, or were driven out by Revan and Malak in the aftermath of the war. The Jedi Tower and the military base were left deserted, only for the exchange to regain its presence, and became the main authority of the planet. Shirka Corporation reclaimed its position in funding the swoop races. The Mandalorians then used Taris as a stronghold in their conquest of the galaxy. For this, Cassius became the most wanted person in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the Battle of Malachor V, the Mandalorians presumably abandoned the planet, or were driven out by Revan and Malak in the aftermath of the war. The Jedi Tower and the military base were left deserted, only for the exchange to regain its presence, and became the main authority of the planet. Shirka Corporation reclaimed its position in funding the swoop races, though the Republic maintained a small military presence on Taris to once again desegregate the world. The planet had not been viewed with any military importance since the Taris siege. This changed when the Sith overran nearly the entire Outer Rim, leaving Taris as the last valuable planet in that region, still under Republic control. In 3956 BBY, the Galactic Senators decided to make a stand there, and the Endar Spire soon arrived above the planet to bulk up the existing garrison. Several important members of the Republic war effort were on board the Endar Spire, including Karth Onasi, Bastila Shan, and an Amnesiac Revan, who was currently under the impression that he was a Republic soldier. While on a mission over Taris, the Endar Spire was ambushed by a Sith warship. Bastila Shan was famous for her affinity to the Force and her skill with battle meditation, but she was unable to use her powers during the ensuing battle. The Sith troops quickly seized the ship in an attempt to capture Shan to use her Jedi powers for their own goals. Shan and several other crew members, including Karth and Revan, escaped the ships in escape pods. The Sith then destroyed the Endar Spire. Shan's escape pod landed outside the Undercity of Taris, while others crashed in the Upper City. Many Upper City citizens gave over injured Republic soldiers to the local healer, Zelka Fawn. The Black Volkers, a swoop gang of the Lower City, swarmed over the Republic escape pods that landed in the Undercity, salvaging what was left of them. Shan had been unable to exit her escape pod in time, due to being separated from her lightsaber, and was captured by the Volkers. Their leader retrieved her weapon for himself, but was unable to use it because he wasn't force sensitive. Revan and Karth's pod had landed in the Upper City, and they found an abandoned apartment to hide out in while they planned Shan's rescue. The rest of the Sith fleet quickly arrived above Taris, and began landing their troops on the planet. There was little resistance from the Tarisians, and the Sith took the Republic military base, and to a lesser extent the Jedi Tower without much trouble, and conquered the planet. Darth Malak, leader of the Sith Armada, enacted a planet-wide quarantine, preventing any ships from landing on or leaving Taris. The Sith also programmed their orbiting fleet to auto-target any ships that attempted to do so, who weren't part of the Sith Armada. This was all part of Malak's plan to capture Shan. The Sith troopers, led by the Sith governor, declared martial law and blocked travel between the levels for everyone but Sith. Sith troops questioned the Upper City residents about the escape pods that landed there, searching for any surviving crew from the Endar Spire. Malak also sent Sith patrols into the Undercity to look for Shan, using the Rakghoul serum to protect them from a mutating disease spread by Rakghouls, which transformed any infected persons into Rakghouls themselves. The quarantine kept many off-worlders who were on business on Taris from leaving the planet. Since aliens were forbidden in the Upper City, without a permit, off-world aliens were ordered into the slums of the lower city while the quarantine was active. The Sith did little to enforce this edict when off-world aliens ventured into the upper city. A local gang war between the Hidden Becks and the Black Vulkars further hindered the Sith's efforts to find Shan. Brajik, the leader of the Black Vulkars, wanted to encourage recruitment into his gang and gain dominance over the lower city by winning the swoop season opener. He had a prototype accelerator stolen from the Becks, which would allow the Vulkars to win the race. He even offered Shan up as a prize to raise the stakes. This was Anasi and Revan's opportunity to rescue Shan. Cooperating with the Hidden Becks, Revan stole back the swoop accelerator and won the Taris swoop championship. Brajik, unwilling to give up his prize, retracted Shan from the prize pool. While Revan protested, Shan freed herself and a brawl erupted. In the end, Brajik and his racers were killed, and Revan looted his body and found Bastila's lightsaber, after which they both escaped to the upper city apartment before reinforcements arrived. After Revan, Karth and Bastila left the apartments, they were greeted by a male Twi'lek, who told them that Canderous Ordo wanted to meet them in the upper city cantina. Canderous, a Mandalorian enforcer for Davik Kang, the local crime lord, and member of the Exchange, was impressed by Revan's skill and boldness during the race and the brawl afterwards. He approached Revan with a plan to escape Taris, and told him where he could obtain a droid, T3-M4, from Janice Noel's shop, that could bypass the security system for the Sith military base. This would allow them to break into the base to steal the codes necessary to bypass the Sith blockade. Once they had obtained the codes from the Sith governor, the three traveled to the lower city cantina to meet Ordo, who took Revan and Bastila to David Kang's estate to steal his ship, the Ebon Hawk. On his flagship, the Leviathan, Darth Malak grew impatient with the search for Shan. He feared her possible escape and ordered his fleet to bombard the entire planet. This was arguably the most horrific event during the Jedi Civil War. Taris was destroyed unnecessarily, as Revan and his crew, including Shan, escaped the bombardment aboard the Ebon Hawk, which would eventually lead to the toppling of Malak's Sith Empire. The upper city, middle city, and the lower city were completely destroyed, the rubble from those levels landing on the surface, which crushed most of the undercity, flattened much of the sewer system below, and badly damaged the promised land beneath that. Most of the upper city citizens were presumed killed, including Davik Kang, while only a few citizens, most notably Calo Nord, survived the destruction despite his injuries. During the Sith occupation, Taris had a population of 6 billion, an already dwindling number, but after its destruction it was closer to 600, with the outcasts of the Undercity being the only survivors who were at their time making their months-long exodus from their village to the entrance of the Promised Land through what was left of the sewers. On the plus side, Taris's destruction and the slaughter of its population had ended many of the planet's problems, including decaying skyscrapers, the Beck-Volker gang war, the oppression of the other violent gangs, the Sith occupation and the Exchange influence, the Sharka Corporation funding, as well as the species and class oppression of Taris and the Gamorrean enforced slavery in the sewers. So after 200 years of the planet slowly dying, since losing the title Coruscant of the Outer Rim, the city was put to rest in a brutal bombardment, knowing not to expect any help from the weakened Republic in any near future, nor seeing any possibility to survive in a world reduced to rubble. The surviving members of the Tarisian government and intellectuals evacuated to a long-term storage facility near one of Taris's underground transport stations, sheltered from the bombardment. There they preserved themselves in carbonite blocks, programming a nearby droid to open the facility when Taris was once again under Republic control. The facility was later discovered during Republic's reconstruction efforts, but there is no record of whether any of the people inside actually survived 3 centuries of stasis. During the Dark Ages, the outcasts were the only survivors. according to their search for the Promised Land. When they had reached their destination, the underground city was vastly different from the legends, or at least after Taris's destruction. They had made it safe, and saw that the realm was sheltered from the bombardment, but found that the buildings, equipment, generators, and possibly droids had been destroyed, and therefore the outcasts had to start over. Whilst difficult, they had survived the bombardment. However, many generations had passed since then, each having a promised one, who would keep the memories of the terrible apocalypse and be in charge of the colonists. The Rakghoul serum, which Revan had previously discovered, was enough to protect the first few generations, but after the Rakghouls evolved to an advanced level, it was obvious the serum became useless, and that babies couldn't be born immune, as many Rakghouls learned to use weapons such as blasters. Some even evolved into the sentient Nekghouls, but unlike the Rakghouls, the Nekghouls couldn't spread infection. The outcast later left the Promised Land and recolonized the by-then sky-filled Undercity and renamed themselves the Tarisians. This, however, was in vain, as the Tarisians continued to die out on the surface, from starvation, disease, and Rakghoul attacks. It was also shown, in the last successfully preserved time recording, that the last generation alive had lost so much information about the world. They didn't even know how or what brought them there, where they had then likely numbered close to a dozen. One by one, the 12 remaining Tarisians quickly dwindled, until not a single human on Taris had remained. This was due to toxic waste in the water they drank from, which ultimately resulted in their extinction, like the rest of the planet's population many years earlier. Following the death of the last generation of the outcast, Taris was inherited by the Nekghouls. By then their population was likely close to 100,000, and they were, for an unknown period of time, the planet's sole sentient species. During the Cold War, 315 years after the bombardment, the Republic took up the difficult task of recolonizing Taris. Initial goals were to establish a spaceport, a military base, and settlements. The Republic believed that rebuilding Taris would be a substantial symbolic victory against the Sith Empire. The rebuilding efforts were focused on the city of Alaris, where the government buildings, spaceport, and chief resettlement areas were located. Led by Governor Leontine Suresh, the recolonization efforts proceeded well. The Rakghoul Plague was one major setback for the rebuilding efforts. To protect against Rakghoul attacks, a Republic resettlement zone was built around Alaris, and eventually found the cure in the wreckage that was created over 3 centuries ago. Protected by the Republic armed forces, the resettlement zone was considered safe from the Rakghoul Plague. These settlers were famous for their shipbuilding skills. These settlers rebuilt some of the planet's former cities, though much of the surface was left in ruins. Historians attempted to excavate the planet-wide ruins, looking for proof that the swoop bike originated on Taris, not long after Taris was linked to the Hydian Way route, the sole route that passed through the entire galaxy. However, the Empire, led by Darth Gravis, attempted to sabotage the reconstruction project. Establishing a central base in the Brel sediment area, the Sith Empire proceeded to sabotage Republic projects through mostly guerrilla attacks and covert operations. Governor Suresh struggled to stamp out corruption in the military and civilian forces across Taris. Thanks to her efforts and her dedication to the cause, the initiative was making more progress than it had in the last decade. However, thanks to the assistance of various members of the Empire, Gravis succeeded in halting the project, and Taris for an unknown period of time was consequently occupied by Imperial forces, despite Jedi and Republic's best efforts to defend the world.